Well, welcome to this week's installment of Ask Rabbi Fox. I'm delighted to be joined this week with Barbara Crane, who has a question for me this week. Barbara, it's such a pleasure to connect, and it's wonderful that we get to have this opportunity to have a conversation here. And we were just talking about how much it will be wonderful to be able to be in person and wondering about these questions together as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So is the format that I ask my question, is that what it is? How it works?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead and ask your question. Right. We can have a conversation about it if you'd like, whatever is, whatever you prefer. Just an opportunity to connect.
Well, I'll tell you the question and the source of it. And I really want to know. And I told a few friends and they're going to listen to this also or watch it also, because it's a big question. My question is, do Jews believe in an afterlife? And I was always told there is no afterlife, there is no heaven. I was raised as a Reformed Jew, more or less. And so there's no afterlife, there's no heaven. And after you die, you don't go anywhere. So you make your best shot now when you're alive. And you don't send flowers at funerals because they're not going to benefit the dead, but you give money to causes that the deceased person would appreciate, be involved in. So that's how you make your mark in tzedakah and good works, those kinds of things. So, and the reason I'm asking, even though I have white hair and I'm definitely in an age group that would think about death, is that I'm a writer, and I wrote a short story in which there was a young man who wanted to know, who said his lover was not Jewish, and he says, Jews don't believe in an afterlife, and everything you do is done here on earth. And she's surprised, more or less. This is not her concept. So what do, especially because we hear Sheol, the word, we go down to Sheol in the Torah. So how do those things jive?
So as with many Jewish questions and many big questions, there is both not an answer and many answers. We have lots of different ways that we've approached this. And there's actually a great book by two thinkers. Their last names are Cincino and Syme. They wrote a book called Finding God, which is fantastic as well. And they wrote another book, I think it's called What Happens After We Die, something like that. Where they go through about a dozen different Jewish approaches to what happens after we die. And there's a couple of fundamental differences, even among all of those different things. Even while there's Sheol, which is in the Torah, where it talks about, going down to Sheol, and there's some speculation, by the way, about the historical connection to other communities at that time. And it seems almost like it was an expression, much in the same way that we might say, we might use the word hell in English. And you'll actually find at times, somewhat rarely, Jewish texts and Hebrew texts that translate a word into English as hell. You'll also sometimes find, very rarely, but a Jewish text that is translated also into English as heaven. And this is where some of the differences take place. So I've most often seen the word that's translated as hell from Hebrew is the word Gehenna. That's another word that gets thrown around, Gehenna. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that I have been in Gehenna. I've literally been in Gehenna. I've been there because it's actually, I remember learning about it and realizing, like, this is Gehenna.
Oh God!
It's literally a valley. The word comes from Ger Hinnom. And it's a valley just outside the original old city of Jerusalem.
Oh,
And it's and if you look at the sources, the various different texts and sources that talk about the different areas around Jerusalem, it describes something happening in Gehenna or Ger Hinnom. And that is, in Ger Hinnom, there was the practice of human sacrifice. Now we have all different kinds of relationships to that particular practice in our Jewish community, and of course the most famous is the binding of Isaac, where many thinkers look at that and see that as a rejection of that practice. Human sacrifice, and actually the particular practice was child sacrifice in that instance, was something that I think we can learn from this tradition as saying it's really the worst possible scenario, the worst possible situation. And so I think we learn a few different things from that particular word, that particular idea in our tradition. And that is that we do have this idea of hell in some of the same ways that we might hear it in popular American culture, but it's a very different context of hell. Hell for Jews is not something that happens after we die. Hell is something that happens here on this earth. It's a possibility. It's the worst case scenario here on earth is Gehenna. And so when we talk about Gehenna, we often talk about it as this situation that can happen here, now, in this world. We similarly have an idea of heaven, this idea of heaven that gets translated, but similarly, peculiarly, since we don't really talk about a heaven or hell afterlife, it needs to be said that there are many different approaches to what happens after we die. And of course, the fundamental Jewish answer is we don't know. We have all of these different approaches, different texts that have come both in the Bible and in the rabbinic sources. And again, that book, What Happens After I Die or We Die, is a great resource in going through each one, which, by the way, they are contradictory to one another. There's just a whole bunch of different, well, this source says this and this source says that, and we don't really know what it means, or we don't have a faith in its truthfulness. In the sense that we don't know. We don't know what happens after we die, but we do, again, have this idea of heaven, just like we have this idea of hell. And we talk about it, and it often gets translated from the words olam haba, which literally means the world to come.
oh,
Olam haba is similarly, just like the idea of Gehenna, this vision, this idea that we have in front of us of the world that we are always working towards. And of course, we have this concept in Reform Judaism of tikkun olam, this idea that we are repairing the world, that it's not complete, that we are partners in the creation of this world and making it into that place that it can be. And olam haba is the ideal, the vision that we are moving towards. And so similarly, in the same way that we can have Gehenna, we can have Ger Hinnom, or this horrible situation happen here and now, it's our actions, our work, and how we live that can cause our world to either be like Gehenna, a hell that doesn't happen after we die, but happens now, here, that we can also have that vision, that idea of olam haba. And regardless of the steps and will we actually get there and what that looks like, this idea of heaven and hell similarly or continues, it is something that happens here and now, something that we work on every single day. So in terms of what happens after we die, I don't know. But in Judaism, we do have an idea of heaven and hell. And what it comes from is this idea that we make this world, and we have the ability to make it like a hell. So too do we have the option and the opportunity to look forward and to make it into the place that we know that it can be. We look ahead to that vision of olam haba, perhaps a heaven.
I see. Oh, interesting. So as you say, what happens after death, you don't know. Would you say,
I don't know.
no, and I don't expect you to, that's okay. But would you say that most rabbinic sources would say, I don't know? I mean, does anybody take a chance and say, Well, I mean, in Christianity, they're pretty sure, and I don't really know about the Muslim faith. The popularized that, how many virgins, 99 virgins or something. I
Muslims
don't
have
believe that. I
their,
mean, I
sure.
think it's much more complicated than that, and I don't know about it. But so do rabbis in general, they don't.
So I am not qualified to speak in depth about the Christian or
No.
Muslim approach to what happens after we
Mhm.
die. But in terms of rabbinic texts, you're right that there are some tropes that find their way into rabbinic literature. So all of them are very vague. None of them have a lot of surety about it, certainty about it. But there are some ideas and some descriptions of an afterlife in some of the rabbinic texts. Some of the rabbis are comfortable talking about Sheol and describing perhaps what happens or what a Sheol might look like. And it honestly has led to a lot of scholars speculating about the influence of Christianity on these particular rabbis. To say nothing of movements like the mystical movement or other movements where you can often chart the exchange. These are moments that seem to have a there seem to be some parallels to other communities, but there are rabbis that do talk about, and they have some of them very particular visions, others not. I'll explain one story that has actually a great influence on the way that we practice, and that is a story that describes, it's from the rabbinic literature, of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva passes away and then comes back 11 months later and describes this kind of purgatory, which is another popular idea in Jewish practice. This idea of that, well, okay, there might be like a heaven, there might be kind of a place that we go after we die, but there is a kind of purgatory that all souls go to, and that some souls will need to go to purgatory just for a day or two, and then they will make their way onto that whatever it is up in the heavens. There was Gersonides, one of the rabbis, speculated that it was literally in the sky, in the heavens, and then of course we sent a rocket up there and thought maybe not, but he this idea of making it to that afterlife. What I'm talking about is that Gersonides was one instance of a very vivid imagination about what that might be. But anyway, the story about Rabbi Akiva, that he comes back from this place of purgatory, and describes, he shows himself in a vision and then disappears, saying that he had kind of made his way through purgatory and was making his way onto that. Now his soul was completely cleansed, and he was making his way onto this heavenly afterlife place. Again, lots of speculation about what does that mean to be in a purgatory, to cleanse our souls? Part of the question is, someone who has not done such great things in their life, do they simply go as quickly as someone who's done good things? It's part of the question of theodicy of evil, but for Akiva, this particular instance, he is there for 11 months and describes that is how long he needed to be in purgatory. You'll notice that, or you may have noticed that we talk about yahrzeit, the anniversary of a death. And we often have the practice of for some people, they'll choose to say the Kaddish prayer throughout that year in a different way than they might afterwards. And there's also a practice of placing a marker at a grave and picking the year moment, maybe around a year, maybe a little bit after.
Right.
Much of that practice actually stems from this particular story of Rabbi Akiva, saying that he needed to be in purgatory for 11 months. And so saying for us that the souls or the people that we love and care about Well, Rabbi Akiva was 11 months. So he was such a great person that we might want to think that the person that we are praying for is in purgatory for that 11 months. But just to be safe, we're going to add that extra 12th month on, or it doesn't quite, in the Hebrew calendar, it sets a little bit differently, but it's near that end of the year. And that we're just being safe by going to that full year place for the soul of the person that we are praying for, the people that we are thinking of. And that year moment of the unveiling of placing a marker is to say they have made it out of that place of purgatory into that afterlife. Now, I think regardless of the literal or non-literal approach to this, there's something really profound, I think, in it, which is that we all have different needs for mourning people who have passed away. We all have different timelines for that as well. And so we recognize that that everyone has a different need, that some of us are going to mourn for a couple of months and feel that we are ready, that we will never be the same, of course, but that we are ready in many ways to kind of move on with our regular day-to-day life. For others, it takes much longer. And so we go all the way to that year place of remembering that person that we've lost. We set structures in place so that we can try to note those particular things. Regardless of literally what's happening to the soul, we need time to mourn. And so we place that year as a full buffer of time for us to find some small sense of normal as we find what our lives look like without this person in it in the same way that they have been. But of course, every year we find different ways to remember them, to think of them, and to mark the way that they.
That's the Yortzeit.
Exactly.
I see. Oh, very interesting.
Oh yeah, Barbara, thank you so much for presenting this question. I am fascinated by this question. There are so many different ways to approach it, and I think death is something that has perhaps one of the most profound impacts on us, and so I think that it's a beautiful thing to wonder about together. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to think about it a little more, to wonder about it, and I look forward to more wondering as we go forward. I thank you so much, Barbara, for joining for this week of Ask Rabbi Fox. I want to mention for anyone who is listening, if you have any questions or you'd like to join, I would be delighted to have the opportunity to wonder about a question with you. Barbara, again, thank you so much, and wishing everyone a wonderful, wonderful week.
Thank you so much. Thank you.